Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm stopping by with a little creative time. We're just going to spend some time just having a play. So I have my products ready. So I've got a 4x6 inch Pink Frog super smooth card, 4x6 inches. I've got the mat, which is 4¼ by 6¼ and the card blank 5x7, and I have all of these in the shop on the website as well. I've got my little 3x5 gel press, which is also on my website, and I thought we'd use some Dina Wakley paints. I'm increasing the number of colours that I'm going to get. I've added some more recently. Some were missing from the order, so hopefully those will arrive soon. And I'm going to do a little background. So I'm going to start with eggplant, again a colour that I've got in the shop. Let's grab a spare piece of card. Isn't it funny when you go live on a video you can't grab hold of a piece of card? So I've got a spare piece of card here because I can just brayer off any excess paint. So I'm going to use eggplant. So let's take eggplant. And I like to just brayer that out. I know a lot of people put the paint actually straight onto the gel press like so. Whichever way you prefer to add the paint. So I'm just going to add just a nice thick, I was going to say nice thick layer of paint. Let's just grab a little bit more. And if you can hear a little bit of a whirring noise, that's just my fan in the background. It's a little bit warm, so I've just got the fan on. So I'm just brayering off the excess paint. The advantage of having the fan on means that hopefully that layer will dry quite quickly. I'm just going to clean my area. Again, you can just wipe it up if you wish, but I'm going to see if there's any available ink on there that we can mop up. It's pretty dry, but I do like to try and mop up anything I can to create any extra backgrounds, because that's just an added benefit. I'm just going to show you where you can find the Dina Wakley paints on my website. Where are we? There we go. Let's find home. So if you go to my website, tracyevansboutiquedesigns.com, sometimes I have to sort of scroll back to the top on my iPad. There you've got, we're on the home page, and you'll see some of the Dina Wakley paints are highlighted. You can scroll across and see the latest products there, which you can just add to cart straight away. My husband is hopefully going to write some software so you can add everything to cart without having to revert back, but hopefully you'll get round to that soon. You then click on all products. So if you click on all products, you've then got the selection. So you've got stamps, blending brushes, workshops, bundles, gift cards, ink pads, paints. So if you click on paints, you will then see all the Dina Wakley paints that I've got so far, and I will be adding to that range. You can go back to all products again, and if you go to accessories, you can also see that I've added non-stick craft sheets and the heat tool as well. The only things I'm adding to my website sort of gradually over time, where I can, are products that I use or I've used for many years. Therefore, I've tested them. I know they work. I genuinely love them, and they genuinely work beautifully with my stamps. So that's the only reason that I'm adding them to the website, just so that it makes it a little bit easier. Now, if I lift this up, you can see the gel plate is relatively dry. Apart from here, can you see it's a bit more glossy there, and you can see that it's wet, not quite as matte as everywhere else, but we'll just give that a few moments to dry. I could, that's a totally dry wipe, I could take the heat tool and gently dry that. Now the Dini Wakley paints have got a good open time, so they stay wetter a little bit longer. So that's perfect for some techniques. Let's grab the heat tool. The advantage of your paint having a little bit more open time is that if I wanted to work on it straight away and then lift the paint straight away, it's still wet enough to lift. It doesn't dry too quickly, which is ideal. I'm just going to add a little gentle heat just to the gel press, just where that little bit of wet paint is. And I'm not adding a strong heat. I'm just drying gently, nothing too powerful on that gel press. So then I'm going to, let's grab one of my stamps. Where are we? Not that one. Can always guarantee I grab the wrong one. That's the one. So I'm going to grab my Garden Elements TE30. So we'll take TE30. And we've got a lovely textural stamp here in the form of the very large hydrangea floral, and it's a skeleton of the hydrangea floral, just so that you can see that it's a skeleton of that. Now I think I can get a or shall I use an acrylic block? I think I'm going to use an acrylic block. Let's be professional and use an acrylic block. So I'm going to turn my gel press around just so that I get different areas of the floral onto the gel press. Now what I like about this, with it being a skeleton of the hydrangea floral, it's got lovely lined detail. So if I lift this up, let me see. There you go. Can you see that on the gel press? Just gives beautiful detail on there. And the paint is dry because you won't get anything off. It's quite dry on there. So then let's make sure that we do it. Let's do it at different angles. And press that down just onto the gel press. I love the 3x5 gel press because I don't feel quite so overwhelmed. And can you see I've got a little bit of there you go. Put that under the light. Now what I want to show you is, let's take the paint off the stamp. Let's just dry that a little bit. Just so you can see, that was the first one I did, and this was the second ones. So let's come in and add a little bit more detail. Now what you'll see is, because I had no paint on the stamp, can you see it's a lot crisper than when I had the paint that was on the stamp. So the paint that I lifted, I'm going to take that off. This wipe is almost dry, but I'm going to take that off because I don't really want to add the paint back on again. And just so that it doesn't matter that I've already gone on there, it doesn't matter one jot, it's a background. Let's press that on there. There we go, and you can see it removes the paint a little bit better. So you can see by lifting it up maybe where you want to add a few more touches. She says by lifting it up. Let's add a little bit on the edge there. So really you're just creating a background, just a bit of a background with texture, and this stamp is beautifully textural. Let's just clean that off. And we know this is dry because we tested that anyway, or I did. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a couple of colours to lift the paint. So I'm going to use wet paint to lift the dry layer. So I've got my card here. A lot of the professionals that do a lot of gel printing use copier paper. I tend to use my card because I want to use it rather than copier paper. So I've got watery, which is one of the new colours. I think this is one of the new colours from Dina. That's online. And I've got turquoise. Again, that's online. So I'm going to grab my brayer, which I couldn't find then. And we'll just add a blob. We'll add a blob of watery here and there. Doesn't matter if there's too much because we can brayer some of that off. And then I'll take a little bit of the turquoise. Why is it always one colour? Little bit of the turquoise. There we go. And then it doesn't help. Let's just turn that fan away just so that we don't. Let's brayer some of that off because you don't want the paint too thick. And then I'm going to take the gel press and I'm going to place that down on my card, and then I'll turn it over. Now the advantage of the Dina paints is because they've got a little bit of open time. You're not in so much of a rush. Some chalky paints can dry really quickly on the gel press and you haven't got enough time to turn things over before they've literally dried. If you've got dexterity problems, just use your brayer on the back of the gel press. And what I can do is I can lift. If you've got some resistance, then you know that you've got a print of some sorts. So let's lift this up. And can you see you've got that textural print on there? Now what I'm going to do, let's grab another piece. Now without me waffling, let's do that again. So you've got a lovely print there. And what we're going to do is do it again. So take the, take the eggplant. We'll try it the other way round afterwards. So take the eggplant and then we'll just brayer that onto our gel press, brayer the excess off onto a piece of card, and again let that dry. I like where it's sort of got this area here and it's just lovely, really lovely. Right, now this is a new gel press, and the more you use it the better they get. And if you find it's beading a little bit, you can place it in between two pieces of copier paper and leave it overnight, and that helps that a little as well. And the reason I'm doing two prints is I always like to experiment. So we know now that we wanted to take the paint off, any paint that we've lifted, because we don't want to add that back on. And then I'm going to, let's have it that way. So we'll just press onto, and you can tell your paint's dry. If your paint isn't dry, you would be slipping all over the place. There we go. So we've got that print on there again. And then let's clear the paint, because you don't want to place any of the sort of dry paint back on again. I just have to lift it because then I can see where I've gone, she says confidently. go. Yeah, we can see that. When you're doing a gel printing session, I would always sort of create several backgrounds in one go. Why not when you've got your gel press out? Seems silly not to sort of have a proper play. So let's have a little bit there, and let's turn it round and we'll have a little bit there. So we've got vaguely some print on all of that, and it's always a good idea when you're using paints, especially using paints and stamps, just give them a clean, especially if it's got, you know, if you've got a really detailed stamp, give that a really good clean so that you don't lose any of that detail. Now I've got plenty of layers on there, so I'm going to add the watery and some of the turquoise. And this is why you don't want to be in a rush, just so that you can take your time. Let's grab our brayer, and then we'll brayer. Let's take some of that excess paint off. So just take some of your excess paint off. You don't want it too wet and too much paint. You want it sort of so there's not too much paint on there. And I can see just half the enjoyment is removing that print and just seeing if you've got some resistance. If you've got some resistance, it works quite nicely. Now you can see I've got the pattern on there, but I've got quite a bit missing here. Can you see? So I can go back. Let's go with the turquoise. Add the turquoise here. Because my paint's quite dry, because I'm adding a thin layer, but also because I've got the fan on, it's even drier. So let's place this. The idea with this is I can place this back over like so. And just add that layer again. Let's lift this. Oh yes. So you can then see you've got the texture in the background, and it gives us a lovely background. So I've got one print, two print with the lovely texture. Now let's do it the opposite way round. Oh no, because I want to lift it up with a light colour, don't I? Let me think. So this time, if you don't play, you never know. So let's add the eggplant. And then we'll add a little bit of turquoise on the gel press. And because these are only background, it's great because you can do so many things with them. It's when you create with them that you get a lovely backdrop. Let's just look how much paint is on there just from one little brayer of paint. It's so rich, the paint is. Not even blended it too much. So let's just give that a little bit of a dry. Look at these backgrounds that I've got, that are spare backgrounds that I can keep adding to. Lift your, no, let's not drop that. Lift your gel press up just so that you can see. Let's use the small one this time. So we've got the small little hydrangea floral. Let's grab a little small. So I'm only doing this for textures, just because it adds to the background. So just wipe that off. There's my kitchen roll, just so I can dab that. Let's see if we can do that at the same time. So let's... So just stamping, just like I did before, the little hydrangea flower on here. Is that on there? I might even try it with the paint a little bit wetter, but I like to try when the paint's dry first to see what backgrounds I get. There we go. So there is some texture on there. Let's see if we've got any texture. And it's brilliant because you don't know what you've got until you lift. Now don't forget, this is just a little bit of a playtime. So let's take some watery paint. That sounds like I'm saying watery paint, doesn't it? Just add a little bit of the watery colour. Spray that off there. Turn this over. Turn your card over. Those look nice together, just with it very pale with the watery and the eggplant. And I've got some resistance. Let's just see. But as you can see, it's so dry in here that it hasn't lifted as much as I want. So let's try again, a little bit more paint. Don't give up if it dries a little bit. It is so warm in my craft room. It is what it is. I'll just lift this up now. So as I'm placing it on, the paint is almost dry. Because it's drying very quickly, even though I've turned my fan. That's because it's probably about 30 in my craft room at the moment. That's better. So because I've laid a second layer, I've got some, as you can see here, some of those textures, but not quite as much as I'd like as I've got in these ones. There's a lot more texture in these ones. So I must admit I'm quite liking the eggplant and watery together, just very pale. So let's do it again, but this time let's add the eggplant. I quite like that background. So let's bring in this one that's got so many layers on it. Look, actually we'll get another one. It's got stacks of layers on these cards. I'll show you the backgrounds afterwards and what we can do with them. not going to dry. I mean, it's drying as I'm just sitting here, to be honest. Got a nice print there. Let's go down this way. Yes, I've got two reasonably good prints on there. Oh, don't forget to clean your stamp, Tracy. She says, with a piece of white that's neither use nor ornament. Let's just wipe that. A bit of so I'm just making sure that the paint is off there. So this should be dry. It's drying before my eyes. So let's just take the turquoise. So we'll take a little bit of the turquoise. But this is why you really do need to play with your gel prints, because even ones that you might think have failed, not necessarily. Because you can still add things to the background and it'll work really nicely. My acetate's coming off now. But what I like about the 3x5 gel presses, it's really manageable. So you can do lots of backgrounds, but you're not you're sort of not worried about breaking that page, because it's only 3x5, so it's quite handy. My acetate's coming off, look. Not surprised in this heat. So let's see if we have a background. This is probably the best one yet. There we go. So you've experimented with the paint a little bit wetter and pressing onto the background. Doesn't that look lovely? Just lovely. Really lovely. So we will use that one. And then you've got all these backgrounds here. So even in sort of 20 odd minutes, you've created several backgrounds. And what you can do, so this was our first one that I really like, with just little bits missing and everything. So it's a bit like worn wallpaper. What you can do is, so we can take a little bit of the watery paint, brayer that out, and you can just change it a little bit. So I've got a little bit of watery paint on that. This one I think is lovely as it is. Let's just see if we can just add little touches. I love experimenting. I quite like the one with the little ones, because actually in real life that's really nice. Let's take a little bit more of that watery and add a little bit of the watery. So I'm going through and I'm adding a little bit of the colour that's called watery. I'm just braying it out, and then I'm just adding some of that colour just to my background of some of my pieces that I created. And you can see that you can just change your backgrounds a little bit. So don't think you've got a background and you're not going to be able to use it, because you are. There we go. And this one I just love anyway, the very pale one. And then we can come back to the backgrounds. Now let's add a little bit of turquoise. So even if you think you've got a background that is a failure, don't think of it as a failure. Think of it as an opportunity to create something from it. So I've got this background now, and I've got the bright turquoise, and I can add the bright turquoise very lightly on the background. And what I end up with is a wonderful, truly wonderful layered background. Honestly, in real life, it is stunning. This one has even got a layer of the paint, or maybe it's a layer of card, I don't know, but no, it's paint. So let's add a little bit of turquoise to that. Look at the colour of my non-stick craft sheet. Just a lovely, lovely colour. So we take the turquoise again, blend that out, and then we'll just, because the reason I'm blending it out or brayering it out is so that I don't add too much, and it looks more like a more artistic background rather than blobs of paint. So let's take turquoise. Turquoise is one of my most used colours. So what I'm doing now is lightly, and I don't have to worry because I've brayed it out. The paint is so thin that it works beautifully. So now my textural backgrounds, where I've got the hydrangea floral in there, take this again. Let's bray this out. Look how much I'm braying it out. So just add little tiny touches of that turquoise, and I'm just layering it. This is the other one, the other background I love, with the hydrangea, the large hydrangea on there, and I can just add it there where it's a little bit, it's just lovely. See if there's any paint on there. And you really don't need much, but you see there, I've got part of the hydrangea petal and here and here. Beautiful backgrounds, just glorious backgrounds. 3, come on Tracy, 4, 5, 6, and all I've done is play around a little. 7 backgrounds, because we've got the very pale one. 7 backgrounds, 20 minutes. Sorry, 8 backgrounds, 20 minutes. And what I can do is I can see if there's any paint here and just bring in a little bit of that turquoise by just flicking it. And you can see it's picked up here a little bit more, which is lovely. Nothing goes to waste. This baby wipe is probably dry, but let's use the kitchen roll. Let's clean all this up. And again, obviously, you can layer things over the top as well, but it just looks just beautiful. So what I'm going to do now is let's just place that back. Just roll that stamp off. Place that back. I need something that's a bit wetter just to make sure. There we go. And then I want, oh, where's the little one? I was going to say, where's the little one? Well, it does help if you haven't got long nails. That's it, roll it off. Let's place that there. And then I'm going to try a little bit of text with my paint. So I'm going to take the magnolia stamp. Where are we? I'm going to take my magnolia stamp, and I'm going to take the text stamp here. I'm going to use it with my acrylic block. Now there are different ways that you can do this. You can either pick it up on a piece of cut and dry foam and dab it just like a ink pad. So you can do it that way if you wish, or you can sort of braid the paint out and pick up the paint with your hand and then just stamp onto the background. So you're just picking up little bits of that and creating texture. Don't forget, your paint doesn't have to be, sorry, your text doesn't have to be facing all the same way. So I'm just going to take a little bit more paint. I'll show you because you can definitely see it. I'm going to show it you on another background as well. Let's grab one of the dark backgrounds as well, just so that you can see that. Let's take this one, brayer this out. Take the stamp, and if your stamp's not sticking to your fingers, just wipe at the back, and then we'll just add a little bit there. We'll take this darker background, just so that you can see what I'm doing. So I'm sort of using my fingers as the ink pad, and it's better if you move it around as well. So let's just clean, always clean your stamp, because you want to make sure that it's cleaned. I'll worry about that in a second, but just so that you can you see the text in the background, very fine in the background, and you can see very fine in the background. You're adding layers, so it makes your background sort of look really artsy. So then I'm going to use turquoise, a little bit darker now. It's because my turquoise, I've had it that long. But if you find it easier by adding it onto your cut and dry foam, then do it that way. You've seen me do it that way plenty of times. And then I'm going to place my stamp into here, and then onto the background, into the paint, and then onto the background, into the paint, and move your text around just so that you get different areas of that text. And again, I will lift this up so that you can see this. Just give that a lovely wipe. I will hold up the backgrounds just so you can see I've built up layers of that text. Just lovely, and a few little layers on there. It's very subtle, but it adds to the overall design of the card, which I just love. And I tend to find cleanup is a little easier if you use a piece of kitchen roll and some water. It doesn't smear quite as far as if you use a wipe. So I'm going to turn my fan around now, just because I'm absolutely boiling. Let's just clean our area. Just love that. And we'll keep that text stamp out because I'll probably use it again to add more detail as well. So then I want to add a little bit of a floral, but do I just want to add, let's put Obs here. So we've got the text stamp. I like using part of stamps as well. So let's put this on an acrylic block. And again, this is about our creative time and just playing. No plan, you're just playing. It's half the fun of just having some playtime. Now, I'm stamping onto acrylic, so you know that I have to think about things when I'm stamping onto acrylic. So let's take the little bit of magnolia. There we go. And you can see I've not included the larger part of the magnolia. I'm just going to include just, like I've missed one little bit, and it will irritate me. Again, the advantage of VersaFine Clair is that it has a good open time. So now I've got the magnolia, and we'll just allow that to work its way onto the surface. It's not going to absorb into the surface, because obviously that surface is no longer absorbent. So you just need to give that a little bit of time just to make an impression on there. So just give it time. Don't be in too much of a rush, because you're stamping onto the acrylic paint. So let's lift that up. There we go. So we've got our, let's clean our hands. So you can see, let's just give this a dry before we start messing with everything. And the reason we're giving that a dry is the VersaFine Clair will just sit on there. So you need to give that a dry, and if necessary, just blot that to make sure that the black is dry, so that you don't start smudging that, because you don't want to do that. We can obviously add our white areas just where we want them. Just a few white areas. To our image. Obviously I can go back in and I can just add a little bit more white whenever I am ready. But I like to just have a play. So what I'm going to do is, oh, now I've got the paints all in the way. So let's take this here, and I'm going to just extend the actual branch a little bit. You could draw it in whatever you wished. You can draw that in. I'm just going to add a little bit more of the stem. That's better. Just so it extends a little bit further. Oh, dry that, Tracy. So we'll just dry that. I'll just chuck it on the floor. That's what happens when you have a desk that's full. And again, we can spend a little bit of time just doodling some of our, not that it's going to matter because it's going to be a background element anyway. So it's not really vital, but just so that you can see, it's definitely going to be just a background piece to the design. And then I want to decide on my other image. So let's take, where's the stamp? Here. Just place this one back. The advantage with just playing for a little bit is it makes you look at your stamps and you really start to play with them. because you actually look through them, or I do anyway. So let's have a look at, where's the tall one? So I've now got Alpha Florals. I'll take our Alpha Florals. If I add, yes, I'll make the stem a bit shorter. As you can see, I've got paint on absolutely everything, because that's what you do when you're playing. Now, if your stamps are not sticking to your acrylic block, just give them a little bit of a wipe and they should stick, no problem at all. And I'm then going to just take one of my pieces of card and we'll see if we can just, I don't think there's going to be, where's my cut and dry foam? That'll be fine. Let's see if we can just use a little bit of watery and see if it shows up enough. So you can also stamp this way as well. Add it to your cut and dry foam so that it becomes your ink pad. And then just add this to your stamp. And that's not going to be dark enough. Let's add a little bit of the turquoise. Work it into your cut and dry foam and then dab that. And then we'll just give that a little light spritz and we'll just stamp with this. So hopefully that will give us our base layer, hopefully. There you go. So you can stamp with paint, no problem at all. Just give it a little spritz with water. If it's particularly warm, like it is in my craft room, it is very warm. So I'm just giving that stamp a little bit of a clean. Let's place that back. Just move this out of the way so you can actually see what I'm doing. And then we can paint our floral. What a mess my desk is. I was going to say I've been good and kept everything in one place, but I've knocked everything everywhere. So what I can do now, I've got the base layer of the turquoise, so I can now add another layer of that turquoise. And if I want something a little darker, we can add a little bit of the Legit. Let's see if that's dark enough. A little bit of water. Again, as I say, the super warm in here. Not ideal for me, I must admit. So I'm just going to add a little bit of the Legit. And just add this. We'll just do 3 petals at a time, mainly because it's drying before my eyes. And if the paint is a little wet, that helps with the blend a little bit. So it's quite nice if you can just do a few of the petals at a time. Or in my case, it's so warm, it's going to be 1 petal at a time. I don't even need the heat tool. So I'm just painting this in with the turquoise and legit. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but who knows. Where's the... Yes, that's right. I can't remember the last time my room was actually this warm. Because it's very warm. The paint is actually drying. Let's just take a little bit, tiny bit of water, pick up a little bit more of that paint just to make it a little bit darker, and then I'm going to come in with a little bit more of this dark colour. The paint adds wonderful texture to your design. Which is just lovely. So I'm just coming in with a little bit more of the legit. And I'm just going to dot a few little areas with the legit on the top of the floral, so that when I add the touches of white, it's going to stand out a little bit more. Let's just... And I'm going to take a... Where's the eggplant? I'm going to take a little tiny bit of the eggplant. I bet you I don't push out a little tiny bit of the paint. I bet it's a massive blob. Oh, miracles never cease. Just pick up the water so my brush is quite moist. Have I got a finer brush? Is this a bit finer? I don't know I'm asking you for, because you're not going to answer me, are you? So I'm just going to come in with a little bit of the spit it out eggplant, just a little bit. Now I'm going to have to work in small areas at a time, mainly because that paint is drying far too quick for me. Let's come back for the legit, take a bit of moisture off, and we'll come in with the legit. Just add a little bit of that. You obviously get far more of a blend if the paint is a little bit wet. So I'm just going to work a little bit faster just so it blends a little bit more. That's better. So just so that the purple sort of bleeds in with the legit, that's better. Remember which one is your eggplant. So a little bit of the eggplant. And then don't worry about sort of washing your brushes at the minute. You need to work while it's wet. That's better. The purple just gives it a little bit more oomph. And then I'm going to come to the turquoise without even cleaning the brush. Just come in with the turquoise. turquoise to here, just so that when I add those touches of white, it'll just have a little bit more dimension. So just coming down with a little touches of that eggplant. It's nothing too overly precise. Let's just look at that pigment in there. Just a little bit of water, and it's the tiniest brush ever. Look, tiniest brush ever. So I'm going to, because I'm a fuss pot, I'm going to add a little bit more there, and then pick up, just like you would with your pencils, you're blending into the previous. That's better, just like it look a little bit more mottled. Oh, that's better. Right, let's give those brushes a little bit of a clean. You could brayer that paint off, but if I brayer any more backgrounds, seriously, you're going to be here until tomorrow, the next day. So let's just give those a little bit of a clean. And again, do you like how good I'm being by washing my brushes? I mean, if you're a professional, you've got a jar ready of water, but I don't have a jar ready because I've got so little space on the table that I'll just knock it over. So I'm then going to take the floral, and I'm going to leave the tiniest white border, and I'm using my Pergamano scissors to cut out, which are sharp right to the point. And I'm turning the card rather than my scissors, but I know you all do what works for you. I just find it much easier if I turn the card rather than my hand, trying to get it into funny positions. And I always think, just an hour having a little creative time, I just forget everything. But it also, that's how you come up with new ideas, by spending a little bit of creative time. I don't cut this out straight, I sort of do it iddly-piddly, so it just looks more natural. There we go. And I don't have to worry about my fingers touching that paint because it's dry. And being a redhead, I can't complain about the heat, but I'm hot. I am so hot. Now, when you've got a silhouette stamp, don't always think you have to stamp in black. Mix it up a little bit. Now, I've stamped in black with one silhouette, but with the other silhouette, I've used paints just to show you different ways that you can get the most out of your stamps. So let's turn that round. There we go. So let's straighten our floral, which I'm rather pleased with how that's coloured. Now I want to make that a little bit shorter because it's a little bit too long. So let's make that a little bit shorter. But what I love is we've mixed the magnolia, the hydrangea and the floral here. So I'm going to add that now. And I love cards like this that sort of got lots of little details in the background. Let's add that down to here. Now I'm not going to stick the leaves down, stems or whatever, but because it just gives it a little movement without having to have too much dimension. You can always lift your floral a little bit and just stick the bottom down like that. Leave these leaves open and you don't necessarily have to have too much dimension. Now you can see the gel print in the background. You can see my magnolia feeding through and the beautiful floral on there as well. So we're going to add our touches of white. So first of all, I want to add some white to the center, just adding a few of those dots. And what I like to do is I like to add the dots, then I come back and I'll add another layer because it just gives it a little bit more depth. And we'll just add a couple of sort of scratchy lines of the white. You really do need to make sure things are dry before you try and work on anything. Is this the one? I always pick up the wrong gel pen. Oh, I think I've picked up the right one. There we go. So oh, I just love that colour. The colours are just delightful. And then I like to come back in and just add a little bit more of the white because it just adds that little bit more. Oh, I love that. Let's add some splatters of our Posca pen. So we'll just add, and the Posca pen on that lovely, rich, dark background is wonderful. We'll just give that a little bit of a dry, just so that Tracy doesn't pick that up, because that's what I normally do when I add it to the black mat. So I'm then going to add this to my black mat. I haven't finished yet, but that's going to add the black mat that sort of frames the design. I need to add some shading, not that bit of card preferably, but I need to add some shading. Which always makes a difference when you add the black mat. And this is just from a little bit of creative time, no plans, just enjoying myself. Now you could have created those backgrounds, have a play with your stamps, adding different stamps in the background and layering with different stamps. It's really lovely. So we're then going to add a little bit of shading. So let's add a little bit of shading. Just here and there. So we'll grab our paintbrush. Oh, should be enough moisture, that should. And the Inktense pencils, they blend out beautifully on acrylic paint. They really do. And they're permanent when dry. I keep just wiping it on my fingers, but there you go. Let's just blend that out. Just lovely. Do you know, I really love that. And then, what was I thinking? Do I want my little one? Want one of my little critters. I'm going to add the little mouse onto there. So just grab my little acrylic block. Little mouse. Let's use our Nocturne ink. And again, it's a very tiny stamp, but still plenty of little tap taps to make sure we've got a good layer of ink on there. I want my little mouse looking at the florals. And I don't really need to press that. I just really need to just give it a couple of seconds to make an impression on the card. Mainly because it's that acrylic paint, that's all. So let's give that a dry. And I can still see just on the whiskers there, it's a little bit wet. I can still see a little bit of wet. And let's just add a little. Honestly, I could faff for ages. Just ground the little mouse a little bit. Let's just, so he's not, that's it. And then we'll add that to our white card blank again, which matte and layers that beautifully and frames the whole design. Now I was going to put a little bit more text on there in black, but I don't want to. I'm quite happy with how that looks just as it is. Just give that, it's even better if it's straight. There we go. So I just want a word on there, but just so that you can see that. I really find those colours really striking, just lovely. So, what word do I want on there? Let's put some of these back. Just so they stay in one place. One advantage of having them in the wallets is things don't go missing. Put that on there the wrong way round, but never mind, it is what it is. Right, so now I need not that one. You have to bear with me now because I just want to find something that I want to use. And of course, because you're waiting for me, I won't find anything. There we go. So on TE15, I like this little sentiment here. Let your dreams blossom. So I'm going to use that one. It's a lovely small sentiment, so not too overpowering. Have that as the whole thing then. Whoops, it's a bit of no, is it glue or paint on it? Oh, it's Posca pen, Tracy, because you've just tried your Posca pen on there. Just don't squish your stamp. Don't press too hard with your stamp, or else you'll just squish it, and we don't want squished sentiments, do we? And this card is covered in Posca pen, because Tracy tested a Posca pen on there. There we go. Let's just add this. To there, and we'll just give that a few moments just to sort of grab. I just like to clear the nozzle of adhesive, just so that that's all clear. Just give that a couple of seconds. Honestly, I talk to you like you're in the lounge with me. And now we will just add a little bit of shading under there, because we want to finish that properly. Let's see if there's any moisture. Oh yes, just enough. There we go. And if we lift that up, that is your card finished. And that's from just a bit of playtime together, which I've just absolutely loved. And then you've got some backgrounds now for creating other projects. Just wonderful to create other projects from, that you can add backgrounds to, or bits of paint like me, but just, you've got those to play with. And if you're like me, you've got hundreds of backgrounds to play with, like so. Absolutely hundreds of backgrounds to play with. So we're never short of ideas. So I hope you enjoyed that playtime, that creative time, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.